I remember stepping off the small ferry, the cold mist clinging to my skin like invisible fingers. The island was silent, too silent. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes you question if you're alone. Pale light flickered from a distant cabin, and somewhere behind me, I thought I heard rustling, but the trees didn't move. The fog curled around the rocks like smoke from some ancient fire, and every step I took felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself was resisting me. Shadows stretched and warped unnaturally, brushing the edge of my vision, never quite forming into anything familiar. I wanted to tell myself it was just the wind, just my imagination, but then I saw it, a dark figure, impossibly still, standing where no one should be. That's when I realized that being alone on this island might not mean being safe. The ferry shuddered once, twice, and then I stepped onto the dock. A pale fog stretched across the island. It clung to my clothes, to my hair. The water lapped silently against the rocks. Cold, hungry, almost patient. I pulled my jacket tighter. The air smelled faintly of salt and something else. Something damp like old soil and forgotten leaves. The forest waited. The trees swayed, though the wind barely moved. Their branches creaked softly, like whispers just out of reach. I could almost hear them breathing. Shadows twisted along the undergrowth. They stretched long, then collapsed, vanishing when I blinked. A soft hum rose from the woods. Not a bird, not the waves. Something deeper. Something that seemed to pulse with the fog itself. I walked slowly, footsteps swallowed by the mist. Each step felt heavier than the last, though the ground was solid. The lighthouse appeared in the distance. Its light flickered against the gray, irregular, uncertain, against the wind's logic. It blinked once, then twice, and vanished. I shivered. The chill pressed at the back of my neck. Soft, insistent, like fingers tracing the spine of my thoughts. Leaves rustled beside me. I froze. Silence answered. The fog swirled. Shapes moved, then dissolved. I wanted to call out. I wanted someone to answer. But my own voice felt foreign, swallowed by the mist. The forest seemed alive. I could feel it, not with my eyes, but with something inside. A subtle vibration under my skin. Something waiting, watching. I stepped onto a narrow path. Roots reached across the soil, gnarled and slick with damp. My hand brushed against the bark of a tree. Cold, alive, watching. The hum rose again, closer this time. Underneath it, a faint rhythm, like a heartbeat. Mine, or something else? I stopped, listened. My breath was loud, too loud. I tried to slow it, but it echoed against the trees. A shadow darted between the trunks. I couldn't tell if it moved toward me or away. The mist thickened. I could barely see my own hands. The lighthouse now appeared broken, its light fragmented, as though splitting the fog into pieces. I pressed on, soft steps against soft earth. The hum became a low murmur. I felt it vibrate in my chest. Something smelled foul, earthy, decay, something dead beneath the living green. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to run, but the path twisted endlessly, as if the forest itself had moved while I wasn't looking. The fog swirled around my legs, rising like water. My heart thudded in rhythm with the unseen pulse beneath the hum. A sudden silence. Not the absence of sound, but the pressing of it. A pause that held the breath of the trees. The whisper of the fog. The thrum beneath my feet. I stood, couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't think past the fog curling around my ankles. Then a shape, not far, just ahead, twisted and pale, shifting like smoke caught in moonlight. I could see out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned, the space was empty. A soft crackle of something breaking underfoot. Leaves, twigs, or maybe not. The lighthouse flickered again. Its light scattered through the mist, brief and chaotic. A pale hand of illumination reaching, then retracting. I felt the chill tighten, not on my neck now, but around my chest, my lungs, my thoughts. I whispered to myself. A name, anything. The sound vanished before it left my lips. The forest seemed to lean closer, the trees bending slightly inward, the shadows folding toward me. I wanted to shrink, to disappear into the fog. But I couldn't. My feet kept moving. Soft, careful, almost reverent. A faint smell of something warm, smoke, maybe, or flesh, brushed my nose. I imagined warmth, comfort, then the memory dissolved. Cold returned, wrapping me like a cloak. I reached the edge of a small clearing. The fog lay in gentle waves. The hum lingered, low, persistent. I stopped, breathed, listened. The island watched. No one else. Nothing else. Only the pale light. Only the soft rustling. Only the mist. And me, alone. The sun was fading when I stepped deeper into the pines. The air smelled sharp. Resin and damp earth. Cold settled in my fingers. The trees swayed gently, though the wind was barely there. Their motion deliberate. I paused, tried to listen. The pines whispered. Names I didn't recognize. Soft, fleeting. Almost like a conversation, just beyond comprehension. My steps carried me forward. Rustling followed, always behind me, echoing my movements. I turned. Nothing. Just trunks, shadows, and the golden light stretching impossibly long across the ground. A branch brushed against my shoulder. Cold, rough. I froze. No one there. I felt the forest's eyes. Not seeing, not watching, but knowing. The kind of awareness that hums beneath the skin. The ground was soft. Fallen needles muffled my steps. My breath felt loud, but I couldn't stop it. A faint smell of pine sap mixed with something older, decaying. The scent prickled at my memory. Uncertain. Sunlight dropped lower. Shadows stretched thin, impossibly long, threading between the trunks. I tried to focus. Shapes danced there, twisting, stretching, vanishing when I blinked. I kept walking, each footstep mirrored by the rustle behind me. Quicker, slower, always just a heartbeat behind. A voice, almost beneath the wind. Whispers, not my name. Names I didn't know, repeating, folding into the swaying. The forest leaned closer. Branches grazed my arms, brushed my face. Cold wood, rough bark. I turned again. Nothing, just the same path, the same shadows, the same fading light. I slowed. My heartbeat thumped loud in my ears. The whispers rose. They weren't angry, not welcoming, just present, patient, waiting. I stepped onto a small clearing. Sunlight was now mere streaks, slicing the fog that had begun creeping low. Shadows shifted at the edges of my vision. The pines formed silent arches, bending inward, almost like a corridor. The air smelled damp, earthy, and metallic. I breathed slowly, tried to ground myself. The whispers followed me, around me, through me. A sudden pause. Silence stretched so taut it felt like holding your breath underwater. Then a twig cracked. Behind me. I spun. Only the forest. Only the thin light fading. Only my own pulse echoing against bark and soil. The rustling returned, mimicking my steps, soft, careful, deliberate. My own movements sounded foreign, as if another shadow mirrored me. I moved faster, softly, tentatively. The whispers grew fainter, almost retreating, almost satisfied. Branches scraped lightly against my jacket. The friction was gentle, teasing. I stopped again, heart hammering, eyes darting. I felt a shiver creep down my spine. Alone, yes, but not quite. The forest was breathing around me. Its presence was thick, tangible. I looked up. The last rays of sunlight pooled gold between the needles. Shadows stretched, twisting thin fingers along the ground. I took a deep breath. The smell of damp pine filled my lungs, grounding me. The whisper subsided to a soft hum. Soft footsteps led me forward. Mine. And maybe not mine. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The clearing ended. The forest pressing again. Shadows folded into each other, curling like smoke. The last sliver of sun vanished. The pines became a darker shade of themselves. Watching. Patient. Alive. I slowed. The rustling behind me faded. I felt the forest exhale. Quiet. Names lingered in my mind. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. Fading, twisting, impossible to recall clearly. I stayed still for a long moment, just breathing, feeling the cold seep in. The damp, the needles, the watching, the pines whispered one last time. Soft, gentle, a promise, or a warning. I moved on, alone but not. The shadows stretched behind me. The forest waited, and I walked. The forest thinned. Needles and leaves gave way to bare earth and scattered stones. A cabin appeared. Small, wooden, silent. Its door was ajar, just slightly. Nothing moved inside. Pale light flickered through the cracks in the walls. Jagged shapes danced across the ground, stretching and breaking with every faint flicker. I stopped. My fingers tingled. The air smelled of pine and something warmer, something old, dust and smoke, or maybe memory. Soft footsteps carried me closer. My own, careful. The door creaked under my weight. Inside, the floorboards groaned. Heavy, deliberate, but the cabin was empty. Or it should have been. A thump upstairs. Slow, like a heartbeat. I froze. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Trembling, the light inside shifted again. Shadows twisted, jagged and alive. The walls seemed to breathe in the flickering glow. I wanted to turn away. I wanted to run. But my feet moved forward, drawn. The wood smelled damp. Old. The faint tang of smoke lingered. I breathed it in, and it burned softly in my chest. Another thump. Higher now. Lighter. A rhythm that felt like it was trying to reach me. I rested my hand on the door. Cold. Sticky. Alive in a way I couldn't name. The cabin seemed to exhale. Or maybe I imagined it. A quiet pulse beneath the boards, beneath the walls, beneath my feet. I pushed the door slowly. It groaned. A soft protest. The room was dim, gray gold from the flickering light. Shadows leapt along the floor and ceiling. The air was thick, still, heavy with dust, coal wood, and the faint metallic tang of something else. Something near. I stepped inside. Each footfall swallowed by the creaking boards. My breath sounded loud, ragged in the silence. Upstairs, the thump resisted. Steady, patient, watching, waiting. I reached the center of the room. A table stood crooked. A chair tipped over. The floorboards beneath me shivered slightly. Not the wind. Not me. Something unseen. The shadows shifted again. Jagged shapes climbed the walls, twisting toward the ceiling, folding into corners. I touched the light switch. Nothing. The flicker continued. Alive, independent. Another thump upstairs. Louder. Closer. I swallowed. My throat was dry. I wanted to speak. Say something. Call out. But the air pressed against my lungs. Silence me. The doorknob rattled in my hand. Cold metal. Sticky. I almost dropped it. A floorboard groaned behind me. I spun. Nothing. Only shadow. Only flicker. Only the cabin breathing around me. I took another step. The air shifted. My hair lifted slightly. The smell of wood and smoke sharpened. Something wet, faint beneath it. Another heartbeat upstairs. Slower now. Deliberate. I felt it in my chest. Mirrored in my own pulse. The room felt alive. Not just the shadows. Not just the floorboards. The walls themselves. Observing. Waiting. I reached the stairs. A single step creaked, loud enough to echo. The heartbeat upstairs faltered. Then resumed. Slower. Heavier. I pressed my hand against the railing. Cold, rough, sticky. The flicker cast long shadows along the steps. Shapes bent and twisted as if reaching for me. The cabin exhaled again. Quiet. Heavy. I wanted to climb. I wanted to flee. My body froze between the two. The air grew thicker. Breathing became a task. The smell of wood, dust, smoke, something wet, something wrong, filled my nostrils. I hesitated, trembled. The thump upstairs, steady now, patient, pulsing, calling. I didn't move. My hand stayed on the railing. The door behind me. The shadows inside. The heartbeat above. And the flickering light. Dancing, jagged, alive. I thought of turning back. But the cabin seemed to lean closer. The air pressed against my chest, whispering, promising, warning. I stayed still, alone but not. The thump slowed, paused. Then nothing. Only the shadows, only the flicker, only the cabin breathing quietly around me. I never should have opened the door. And yet, I did. The fog thickened as I stepped forward. Every tree blurred into another. Shapes vanished before I could name them. The earth was soft beneath my feet, damp and cold. Needles and moss clung to my shoes. I retraced my steps, or thought I did. The path twisted strangely. Unfamiliar now. Soft footsteps echoed behind me, perfectly timed with mine. I froze. My breath trembled. I glanced back. Nothing. Only the fog rolling like a pale tide. The forest seemed endless. I could see nothing beyond the white haze. A faint static hum vibrated in the air. Low, insistent, pressing into my chest, my lungs, my thoughts. I shivered. The cold fog wrapped around my arms and legs. Wet, soft, almost alive. Leaves rustled beside me. I turned. Only fog. Only trees leaning closer than before. Another set of steps, echoing mine. Closer now. I tried to quicken my pace. The footsteps quickened, too. Always matching, always just behind. My skin prickled. A scent rose. Damp earth mixed with something metallic. Blood, maybe, or rust. The fog thickened further. Shapes moved within it. Shadows stretched long and thin, folding into themselves. The hum grew louder, resonating beneath the soil, through the air, vibrating along my bones. I stopped, heart thudding, breath catching. The footsteps continued. Patient, calm, waiting. I called nothing, whispered nothing. My voice seemed swallowed instantly by the fog. The trees leaned inward. Branches scraped lightly against my jacket. Cold, rough. I flinched. A shadow flickered to the side. Gone before I could focus. I stepped carefully, softly, almost silently. The fog pressed tighter around me. The static hum lingered, now more whisper in my chest than in my ears. I tried to remember the path, tried to find a landmark. The forest offered none. Only endless trunks, endless mist, endless soft footsteps. I glanced over my shoulder again. Nothing but fog and shadow. The path twisted underfoot. Stones, roots, moss. My hand brushed against the rough bark of a tree. Cold, solid, comforting and wrong at once. The footsteps echoed louder in my mind. Not audible, not real, but too precise, too perfect. A sudden pause in the hum. A silence so thick it pressed against my skull. Then the footsteps resumed. Steady, matching me, waiting. I moved faster. The fog moved with me, rolling, curling around my legs, seeping through my clothes. My breath puffed in small clouds. The smell of damp pine mixed with a faint metallic tang. Every direction looked the same. The fog erased all memory of the trail. The static hum vibrated beneath my feet. Felt almost alive. Watching, judging. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape. But the footsteps continued. Patient, inescapable. A thin branch snapped above me. I flinched. The echo rolled through the fog. My pulse raced. My hands shook. I could feel the unseen presence behind me. Always matching. Always near. I stumbled over a root. The footsteps faltered, then resumed. Perfectly timed. The fog seemed to thicken into walls. Each step forward became a careful negotiation. Soft earth, moss, slippery roots, shadows folding in on themselves. I stopped, breathed. The static hum pulsed against my ribs. A heartbeat not mine. The forest stretched endlessly, mist curling between trunks, shadows flickering at the edge of sight. The footsteps paused. I waited too long. A shiver ran up my spine. The fog pressed against my face, cold and wet. My breath mingled with the chill. The forest exhaled slowly, patient, knowing, alive. I moved again, softly, carefully, each step measured, matching the echo behind me. Though I could not see it, the fog rolled forward. Shadows stretched thinner. The hum lingered faintly, like a warning, like a promise. And still, the forest seemed endless. Still, The footsteps matched mine. I walked on, alone but not alone. The mist swallowed me. The fog had thickened again. Each tree loomed taller, darker. Their trunks stretched into shapes that seemed almost deliberate. I walked carefully, soft footsteps on damp earth. My breath puffed in the cold air. A shadow crossed my path. Too tall, too thin. It moved with me, mirrored me perfectly. I froze. My skin prickled. The air smelled damp, sharp, like moss and old bark. I tried to step aside. It shifted, always aligned with me, never revealing a face. The trees behind it bent, not naturally. Their branches arched, twisted, as if the shadow pulled them toward itself. I swallowed, my throat dry. The fog pressed against my legs, my chest. Cold, wet, insistent. I turned quickly, to the left, to the right. The shadow was always there, always closer, always at the edge of visibility. The hum returned, low, subtle, vibrating faintly in my chest. Not loud enough to hear, but too heavy to ignore. I tried to run. Softly, carefully. The shadow followed. Smooth, patient, silent. Every step I took, it mirrored. Every pause, it paused. The forest seemed to shrink around me. The trees leaned inward. Branches scraped my arms. Cold bark, rough and wet. I glanced down. My own shadow stretched normal. But the other stretched impossibly long, too thin, swaying slightly. I felt a breath on the back of my neck. Not mine, not the wind. The path curved. I followed. The shadow followed. Every turn, closer. Every step, aligned. I smelled damp leaves, moss, something metallic. Iron, maybe, or rust. Something sharp. A soft rustle ran through the trees. The shadow did not move in the rustle. It moved where I moved. I stopped, held my breath. The fog pressed against my face. The air heavy, almost viscous. I could see it now more clearly. A dark figure, featureless, stretching upward. The forest around it bent unnaturally. I took a careful step backward. It stepped backward. I stepped forward. It followed. The island felt alive, breathing, watching, shrinking, closing in. I could hear my pulse, fast in my ears, the hum under my ribs, my lungs tight. Branches scraped against my jacket. Rough, cold, wet. I flinched. The shadow swayed slightly, almost curious, or patient, or waiting. I turned abruptly. The shadow paused, then realigned perfectly, always at the edge, always there. The fog curled around me, soft, insistent, filling the space between the trees, between the shadow and me. I whispered nothing. Couldn't. The fog swallowed words before they left my lips. A faint metallic scent grew stronger, damp, sharp, everywhere. I inhaled slowly. The trees leaned closer. The shadow grew taller in the mist. Its outline stretched, twisting with the swaying pines. I shivered, fingers numb, feet wet, heart loud in my chest. I tried to sidestep. It mirrored me. I paused. It paused. The fog shifted around it. Shadows from other trees bent toward the figure. The forest itself seemed to breathe with it. I pressed my hand to the nearest trunk. Cold, solid, comforting for a moment. I stepped forward slowly. The shadow matched, closer than before. The hum vibrated faintly beneath my feet. Not from the ground, from the air, from the trees, from the shadow itself. I stopped. The island closed around me. Trees bending, shadows folding, fog curling. The shadow remained, always near, always waiting. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the mist. But the forest and the shadow seemed to stretch further, waiting for me to move. I exhaled slowly. The fog pressed in, soft but unrelenting. The figure did not change, did not blink, did not speak. And I walked on, alone but never alone. The cliff edge jutted into gray nothingness. Fog swirled thick and pale, curling around my ankles, wet and cold. Salt and seaweed filled the air. The wind carried a faint metallic tang. The lighthouse stood above the churning waves. Its light pulse like a heartbeat. Slow, patient, unearthly. I watched the beam swing over the fog. Shapes appeared, twisted forms that vanished the moment I tried to focus. Rocks, mist, or something else, alive in the pale light. I stepped closer to the edge. The cliff crumbled slightly beneath my foot. Cold stone, slick with fog and salt. A soft murmur rose from below. Or was it the waves? Chanted rhythm? Whispers carried through the wind. Something watched. Something patient. Beneath the water, beneath the mist, waiting, the lighthouse pulsed again. Shadows leapt in the fog. Jagged, fleeting. I leaned into the wind. It pressed against my face, wet, sharp, full of salt and faint smoke. The shapes in the fog moved with the light, dancing, twisting, vanishing when the beam caught them. I shivered. The air seemed heavier here. Dense. Watching. A static hum vibrated faintly through the cliff stone, under my feet, in my chest. Not loud, but insistent. I stepped back. The lighthouse beam rotated slowly, slicing the fog into pale ribbons. Each ribbon revealed more shapes. Twisted trees that weren't trees. Shadows bending unnaturally. The murmurs rose again. Beneath the waves, beneath the wind. Patient, soft, repetitive. I could feel the cliff breathing. Or maybe I imagined it. The fog thickened around my legs, curling up, wrapping, gentle and insistent. Another pulse from the lighthouse. The shapes leapt, twisted, then vanished completely in the gray swirl. I stepped closer to the edge again. The wind tugged at my hair. My clothes were damp, cold pressed into my bones. The sea hissed below. Something moved just beneath the surface. I couldn't see it clearly. Only ripples, shadows, and the hum in the air. The lighthouse pulsed once more. Light spilled over the fog, revealed a thin, leaning shape on the cliff below. I blinked. Gone. I breathed slowly. The air smelled of damp stone, salt, and faint smoke. My chest rose and fell with the hum. The fog pressed against my face. I could taste it. Cold, wet, alive. Another murmur, beneath the crashing waves. Soft chanting? Or just the wind? I couldn't tell. The lighthouse pulsed again. Shadows unfolded, twisted, and vanished. The shapes in the mist seemed to follow me now, drifting just beyond the beam. Watching. Waiting. I stepped back from the edge. My foot sank into soft stone and moss. Wet, slippery. The hum lingered, subtle now. Beneath my feet, through my chest. A pulsing rhythm with the lighthouse. I leaned against a boulder. Cold stone, rough, damp. The fog wrapped around me like a living thing. The lighthouse pulsed again. And again. Shadows danced in the fog. Twisted shapes, impossible to hold in memory. The murmurs rose softly, fading, returning. Patient, waiting. Something below watched. Always there, in the gray swirl, in the pulse of the light, in the fog curling around the cliff. I stayed still, breathing, listening, feeling the lighthouse pulse, the fog pressing, the waves chanting beneath. The shapes flickered, the shadows bent, the hum throbbed faintly. I exhaled, slowly, carefully. The cliff, the fog, the lighthouse, the watching. Everything seemed alive. Everything seemed aware. I stepped back from the edge. The fog swallowed the cliff. The lighthouse pulsed, and I walked away. The cabin waited. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Fog still curled at the windows, pale light spilling weakly through. The floorboards whispered beneath my feet. Tiny scratches and taps echoed unnaturally. I froze. Listened. Each step I took was mirrored by the wood itself. Groaning, shifting, alive. A drawer slid open slowly. No hands. No wind. Just a soft scrape of wood against wood. Inside, old photographs lay scattered. Faces I didn't recognize. Eyes staring from paper into the dim light. I bent closer. The smell of old paper, dust, faintly metallic, rose into my nose. The shadows gathered in corners. Dark shapes stretching and folding along walls and floor. A cold breath brushed my ear. Not wind, not air. Something nearer. Something deliberate. I wanted to move. I couldn't. My feet felt glued to the floor. The scratches beneath the boards grew louder, tiny taps like nails tracing a rhythm. Waiting, patient, the hum returned. Low, subtle, felt in my chest rather than in my ears. I reached toward a photograph. Cold fingers, edges brittle, faces staring silently back. Some smiling, some blank. All wrong. The air thickened. The fog pressed against the windows, pale and insistent. I stepped back. The floorboard whispered again, louder this time. The rhythm pulsed beneath me. Shadows shifted, flickered, congregated, moving like water pooling in corners. I held my breath, couldn't look away from the photographs. The eyes seemed to follow. A drawer slid slightly again. Another soft scrape. I imagined shapes curling inside it, waiting. The cabin seemed alive. Not the walls, not the floor, not entirely. Something else, something aware. I pressed my hands to the nearest wall. Cold wood, rough, damp with fog. Solid, comforting. The scratches beneath the floorboards grew faster. Tapping, scraping, deliberate. I wanted to leave, but my body didn't respond. Feet rooted to the soft floor. Hands trembling. A shadow stretched across the room. Taller than it should be. Too thin. Folding along the corner. Reaching subtly toward me. I breathed slowly. The air smelled of damp wood, dust, and faint smoke. Another cold breath brushed my neck. I shivered. Skin prickled. Goosebumps rose. I stepped forward tentatively. The floorboards protested with soft moans. The drawer rattled lightly. Photographs shifted. Faces leaned forward. Eyes deeper in the dim light. Watching. The hum persisted. Low, felt in my chest. Pulsing with the scratches beneath my feet. The shadows moved closer, gathering along the walls. Stretching, bending. Pulling the corners into themselves. I bent again toward the photographs. Fingers trembling. The paper cold. The images still. Eyes unblinking. A floorboard groaned sharply. I froze. The cold breath returned, brushing my ear. I wanted to speak. A name. Anything. But the fog pressed against my lips. The cabin held me. Soft. Patient. Alive. The drawers whispered again, sliding minutely. Photographs shifted subtly. The eyes seemed to follow every movement. I stepped back. The floorboards beneath me creaked. Scratched. Tapped. Waiting. Shadows filled the corners. Pale light from the fog outside cast jagged shapes along the walls. The hum in my chest grew softer. Gentle. Insistent. A rhythm I could not escape. I exhaled slowly. The cold air brushed my skin. The fog pressed against the windows, pale and curling. I wanted to leave, but the cabin would not let me. Not yet. I stayed still, breathing, listening, feeling the scratches beneath the floorboards, the shadows gathering, the cold breath brushing past. The photograph stared. The room pulsed softly. The fog pressed. And I remained, alone, but not. The forest was darker than before. Twisted trunks loomed, black against the fading fog. The air smelled damp, earthy, with faint hints of moss and decay. I walked slowly, soft footsteps on wet leaves, each one muted by the fog curling at my ankles. Eyes blinked from the darkness. Twisted tree trunks held them. Not animal, not human, something else. Watching. Each blink felt deliberate. A warning. A secret I wasn't meant to know. I stopped, heart thudding, breath visible in the chill air. The fog pressed against my legs. Cold, soft, alive. A hollow laugh floated across the forest. Distant, echoing, empty, hollowing. I swallowed, tried to steady my chest. The laughter lingered in the fog, curling around the trees, folding into shadows. I stepped forward. The leaves crunched softly underfoot. Each sound seemed magnified in the silence. The eyes blinked again. Watching, waiting, patient. A branch brushed my shoulder. Rough bark wet from fog. I flinched. The air hummed faintly. Beneath my feet, between the trees, I couldn't tell. Only that it vibrated along my ribs. Another laugh, softer this time. Almost a whisper, almost a breath. I froze. The fog thickened. Shapes of the trees stretched, twisting toward me. Shadows bent unnaturally along the trunks. The eyes blinked again. 1, 2, 3. Everywhere. I tried to move quietly. The forest shifted around me. Twigs snapped softly. Leaves rustled. The smell of damp earth and old bark was stronger now. Metallic hints in the air. Rust, maybe blood, maybe memory. The laughter rose again. Hollow, receding, returning in waves. I stopped entirely. Tried to hold my breath. The forest seemed to lean closer. The eyes followed. A tree trunk twisted, bending slightly as if to peer around itself. The eye on it blinked once. Slowly, deliberately, the fog coiled around my legs. Soft, cold, insistent. I could feel it pressing against my skin. Another laugh floated. Fainter, yet it rolled in my chest like a vibration. The eyes multiplied. The darkness between the trunks swelled. They blinked in sequence, like a slow rhythm. A pattern I could not follow. My heart thumped. Fast, loud, in sync with the blinking. The fog swallowed shapes. Shadows danced. The trees stretched taller, thinner, unnatural, alive. I could smell the damp decay, the faint metallic tang lingering, pressing against my senses. The laughter faded, left only the blink of eyes. Silent, patient, watching. I wanted to turn, to flee, but my feet pressed into the soft earth. Rooted, tied, the fog curled at my waist. Shadows twisted along the trunks. The eyes blinked slowly, steadily, each movement deliberate. I whispered nothing. Couldn't. The forest pressing on my lips, the fog around my face, the chill in my chest. Another blink. 1, 2, 3. A rhythm I could feel, deep in my chest. I stepped forward, slowly. The eyes followed. Shadows bent toward me. A faint hum rose beneath the fog, vibrating through the soil, through the roots, through my body. The forest breathed, or maybe I imagined it. Branches swayed slightly. Leaves rustled faintly. The eyes watched. Always. Patient. Waiting. Another laugh. Soft, almost playful, hollowing. It lingered, folding into the fog, curling around my ears. I exhaled slowly. The air was damp, cold, full of unseen weight. The eyes blinked again. Shadows shifted along twisted trunks. The fog pressed closer. I stepped back. The forest did not release me. I could feel the pulse of the trees, the weight of the fog, the hollow rhythm of the laughter fading, but never gone. And the eyes, always there, watching. I moved forward again, softly, carefully, my own pulse loud in my ears. The forest leaned in, twisted trunks bending subtly, shadows flickering, fog curling at my feet. The hollow laugh receded completely, leaving only the blink of eyes and the soft hum of the forest. I kept walking, alone, but not alone. The eyes remained. Always, the shoreline appeared through the fog. Waves slapped the rocks with unnatural precision, rhythmical, patient, like the tide itself was counting. Salt stung my nose. Damp wind pressed wood against my skin. I stepped closer. The fog thickened, curling around my legs like pale fingers. Figures moved within the mist. Distorted shapes, flickering, twisting, dancing just out of reach. I tried to focus. They vanished when I looked directly. The horizon disappeared. Gone. Only fog stretched ahead. Pale, endless, swallowing the world. The figures move again. Closer, tentative, mirrored the rhythm of the waves. I stepped into the shallow water. Cold, bracing, biting at my ankles. Each step sent ripples that the fog swallowed instantly. The salt stung my eyes. My breath came out in small clouds. The figures reached toward me, not with hands, not with limbs, only shapes, only intention. The waves pulsed with the fog, reaching, curling, pressing against my legs. I wanted to step back. My feet sank into wet stones and sand, rooted, anchored by something unseen. The fog pressed against my chest. Damp, cold, heavy. The figures shifted, stretching, leaning closer, their edges blurred with the mist. A hum rose from the water, low, subtle, felt rather than heard, vibrating along my legs, into my chest. I flinched. The waves seemed alive, reaching, curling, waiting. The wind carried smells of brine, wet stone, faint metallic tang. Iron? Blood? Memory? I tried to move forward. The figures swirled in the fog, dancing just beyond the beam of pale light from the lighthouse far above. Ripples lapped my knees now. Cold water pressed against my skin, sharp and soft at once. I stepped deeper. The figures advanced. Not fast, not hurried, patient, insistent. The horizon remained gone. Nothing but fog, shadows folding into themselves. A wave rose higher, brushed my chest. The water felt heavier than it should, almost alive, reaching, grasping. The figures leaned closer, flickering, twisting in the mist, silent, watching. I could hear the water hissing, small whispers curling through the fog. I swallowed, heart pounding, breath sharp in my chest. The fog wrapped around my shoulders now, cold, damp, heavy. Another wave pressed against me. The water seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the figures. I reached out to touch the nearest shape. Only fog met my fingers. Cold, wet, unyielding. The shapes shifted, always at the edge, always just beyond clarity. The hum beneath the waves persisted, a low vibration that threaded through my legs, my chest, my mind. I stepped deeper, water up to my waist. The fog closing completely, swallowing the shoreline, swallowing the waves. The figures swayed in the mist, pale, distorted, unhuman, patient, watching. The cold pressed harder against my skin. My hands trembled, feet slipping slightly on stones beneath the water. A ripple brushed my face. Damp, cold, salty. A whisper in the fog. The horizon remained lost. The figures remained patient. The waves pressed and curled. I tried to retreat. My feet refused. Anchored by water, by fog, by unseen insistence. The hum vibrated louder, felt in every bone. In my chest, in my legs, in my skull. The figures reached again. Not fast, not hurried, just patient, intentional. I exhaled slowly. The fog pressed closer. The water pressed closer. And I realized I was not walking toward them. They were reaching toward me. The cove lay still. Fog curled across the water, pale and soft, brushing my ankles as I approached. Salt stung my nose. Damp air pressed against my skin. A rowboat drifted silently. No one inside. No oars in hands. Yet the oars moved, slowly, smoothly, guided by invisible hands. I stepped closer to the edge. Water lapped against the hull. Cold, insistent, alive. A whisper rose from the water. My name. Soft, slow, certain. I froze. Breath caught in my chest. The fog curled tighter around me. The rowboat shifted slightly, guided by something beneath. The oars dipped and rose, slicing ripples into the still surface. I looked down. My reflection shimmered. The pale light caught ripples. My face, then something behind me. Something dark, blurred. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only fog. Only the water curling gently around the boat. The whisper returned. Softer this time. Rolling across the water, through the fog, pressing against my ears. I stepped closer to the bow. The wood was cold, damp, salt rough under my fingers. The oars move again, each stroke smooth, patient, insistent, pulling the boat closer, though no one was there to guide it. I could hear the faint hum beneath the water, low, steady, vibrating through the mist, through the fog, through my chest. The reflection shifted again, my own face first, then another figure, lean, tall, blurred, standing just behind me in the water. I tried to step back. The whetstones beneath my feet clung, slick and cold. My foot slipped slightly. The whisper rose again. My name, drawn out, soft beckoning. The rowboat swayed gently. The oars cut ripples into the fog-swollen water. Each ripple carried a weight, pressing outward toward me. I smelled salt, wet wood, and something faintly metallic. Iron rust memory. I swallowed, heart pounding, breath visible in the cold air. The water shimmered unnaturally. The reflection danced, faces blurred. The figure behind me moved closer, though the fog was empty. I reached out to touch the boat, only cold, damp what met my fingers. The oars moved again, slowly, smoothly, guided, patient, insistent. A ripple licked my ankles, cold, wet, pressing upward, almost reaching. I stepped back. The stones shifted under my weight. Water splashed lightly against my boots. The whisper followed, curling around my ears. The reflection in the ripples shifted again. My face, then another, taller, thinner, featureless. Watching, patient. The fog pressed tighter. Cold mist against my skin. Soft droplets sliding down my neck. The hum beneath the water grew slightly stronger. Felt more than heard. Vibrating through the soles of my feet. Through my chest. I breathed slowly. Tried to steady my pulse. Tried to focus on the boat. The rowboat drifted closer. Oars dipping, rising, slicing pale lines through the fog-heavy water. The whisper was certain now. My name, drawn, soft, insistent, pulling at me. I could see my reflection again. My face, the figure, closer, waiting, patient. I wanted to turn, wanted to run. My feet stayed rooted on the wet stones, anchored, pressed by fog, by water, by unseen insistence. The oars moved once more, smooth, measured, reaching outward toward me, though no one guided them. The fog pressed my vision. The water pressed my legs. The whisper pressed my ears. I exhaled slowly. Cold air rushed in, damp, salty, sharp against my lungs. The figure in the reflection shifted again, closer, watching, waiting. I stepped back. The rowboat drifted closer. The oars dipped, rose, cut ripples in the fog water. The hum thrummed beneath me. Steady, patient, insistent. I realized I was not approaching the boat. The boat, the water, the whisper, the figure. They were reaching for me. The cabin waited in silence. Fog pressed against the windows. Damp, cold, curling around the corners. I stepped inside. Would creak softly beneath my weight. Then a hum began. Low, electrical, insistent. No power. Nothing plugged in. Nothing should have made a sound. I froze. The hum grew slightly, vibrating beneath the floorboards, through the walls, into my chest. A radio on the counter crackled. Static, whispering voices. I leaned closer. Words formed in a language I almost understood. Almost. The sound pressed against my ears. Soft, insistent, insinuating. Shadows crawled along the walls, twisting, folding in on themselves. Each flicker timed to the static rhythm. I reached out. Air smelled damp wood, dust, and faint ozone. Electricity that shouldn't exist. The hum persisted. Subtle but alive. Beneath my feet, through my ribs, threading into my mind. The shadows shifted again, gathering at the corners, stretching across the ceiling, bending the light. Pale, uneven, impossible. The radio murmured, voices rising, falling. Soft syllables I almost recognized, brushing at memory but never forming. I tried to step back. My feet met floorboards that whispered beneath my weight. Cold, old, groaning with intent. The cabin felt alive. Not walls, not wood. Something else. Watching, waiting, breathing. I inhaled slowly. Dust rose from the corners, swirled in the pale fog, creeping through the open window. The static hummed, louder now, pulsing in sync with the shadows. A floorboard shifted beneath me, a subtle scrape. The shadows mirrored the movement, stretching toward me. The radio murmured my name softly, almost teasing, almost familiar, almost real. I pressed my back to the wall, cold wood against my spine. Rough, damp, anchoring me, though the hum pressed from beneath and above. The shadows grew longer, thinner, twisting to the rhythm of the static. I tried to look away. My eyes returned to the radio. Flickering lights, static waves rippling across the screenless device. The whispers rose slightly. I could almost understand. Words brushing against my memory. A message I could not hold. The air thickened. Damp fog curling around my legs. Static humming in my ears. A vibration I felt through every bone. The shadows leaned closer. Not fast. Patient. Aware. Malicious. I tried to step forward. Floorboards groaned. Scratched. The movement echoed the rhythm of the static. The radio crackled sharply, voices overlapping. The language familiar now. Not words I could speak. Words I could feel. A shadow stretched from the corner. Reaching, bending, folding, twisting along the ceiling. I held my breath. Fog pressed into my lungs. Damp. Heavy. The hum pulsed again. Beneath the floor and the walls. Threading through my chest. The radio whispered my name. Drawn out. Soft. Patient. Insistent. Shadows crawled along the floor. Across the walls. Folding around corners. Climbing toward the ceiling. The hum vibrated through me. Low, steady, alive, patient, deliberate. The fog swirled. Dust and damp would rose in spirals around me. Each particle caught in the pale light of the window. The radio hummed, crackled, voices soft layering, pushing. Almost a sentence, almost a memory. The shadows grew longer, pulled toward me, folding the corners of the cabin inward. I exhaled slowly, breath caught in my chest. Cold air pressed against my skin. Damp, electric, heavy. The static hummed, low, subtle, insistent, a rhythm I could not escape. I tried to step back. Floorboards whispered, shadows mirrored. The radio whispered again. The cabin was alive, not with wood, not with walls, but with something else, something patient, waiting. I stayed still, heart pounding, breath shallow, fingers brushing cold, rough wood. The static persisted, shadows twisted, fog pressed, voices murmured, and I realized I was not listening to the radio. The cabin was speaking, and I was alone, but not. The fog lay heavy over the island, soft and damp, curling around my ankles, clinging to the trees, the rocks, the ground beneath my feet. I stepped forward. Leaves rustled. Damp earth pressed against my shoes. Footprints appeared. Not mine. They pressed into the wet earth. Clear, deliberate, leading in a circle. I followed them slowly, each step muffled by fog. Heart thumping, breath visible in the cold air. The trees leaned toward me. Not natural. Branches bent like fingers, blocking my view. The fog wrapped tighter, thickening, pressing against my legs, my chest, my back. The footprints repeated, over and over, each loop identical, unchanging. I swallowed. The air smelled of damp moss and rot. Earthy, heavy, unyielding. The island felt alive, watching, playing a game. I was the only player. I stepped carefully. Soft footsteps on wet leaves. The footprints before me unyielding, waiting, patient. A branch scraped my jacket. Rough bark, wet. I flinched, turned. Nothing. Only fog and twisted trunks. The footprints curve again. Back to where I started. Or so it seemed. My chest tightened. Breath quickened. Panic rising slowly, quietly, insidiously. The trees shifted slightly, bending closer. Shadows deepened beneath them. I traced the prints again. Circle, over, round, endless. The fog pressed higher, curling over my head. Smell of wet earth and decay heavy in the air. Soft hum in the distance. Not wind, not water. Low, persistent, vibrating through the soles of my boots, up into my legs. The footprints never faltered, never ended, always returning to the same spot. I tried to step off the path. The fog resisted, thick, soft, curling around my ankles like invisible fingers. The trees leaned further. Shadows stretching, bending unnaturally, blocking exits, blocking sight, folding the world inward. My pulse raced, breath shallow. The footsteps beneath me echoed too clearly. Not mine. A subtle rustling behind me. Soft, deliberate, mimicking, waiting. I turned slowly. Fog shifted. Shadows flickered. Nothing. Only footprints leading me forward. Always forward. The island itself seemed to pulse. Alive. Breathing. Shaping. Folding space around me. I traced the circle again. Each step pressing into wet earth. Each step feeling heavier. The fog thickened. My vision narrowed to the footprints ahead. Narrowed to my own trembling hands. The hum beneath me grew. Subtle vibration threading through the soles of my feet, through my ribs, into my chest. I tried to stop. My feet pressed into the wet earth. Rooted. Tied. The footprints waited for me. Patient. Deliberate. The trees bent further. Shadows stretched impossibly. Branches curled toward my face, then retreated. I shivered. Cold mist pressed against my neck. Damp against my hair. The smell of earth and rot deepened, rich, suffocating. The circle repeated. Round and round. Footprints unbroken. Unchanging. Endless. The island was watching. Waiting. Playing. Smiling in silence. I exhaled slowly. Heart pounding. Breath coming out in visible clouds. The fog swirled at my feet. Soft, damp, alive. I wanted to run. But the footprints guided me. Pulled me. Anchored me. The trees bent one last time. Shadows folded, blocking everything. The fog pressed tight. Damp and insistent. I realized I had never left the circle. The island had me. And I was alone. But not. The fog thinned slightly as I stepped forward. Damp air clung to my skin. Cold. Heavy. Pressing against my chest. A glow appeared ahead. Warm. Flickering. Alone in the mist. A lantern hung in midair. No rope. No hand. Nothing holding it. It swung gently as if breathing. Pulling me closer. Patient. Insistent. The air smelled faintly of smoke and wet wood. Sweet and sharp. Curling into my nostrils. I stepped toward it. Soft footsteps muffled by fog and fallen leaves. Shadows shifted around the glow. Twisting, stretching, bending. Faces flickered in the corners of my vision. Pale, fleeting, impossible. The lantern revealed a path I had not noticed before. Narrow, winding, between leaning trees and mystic trunks. Each step brought the fog curling tighter around my ankles. Damp, clinging, alive. I paused, heart thumping, breath catching in my chest. The shadows leaned closer, twisting along the path. Faces forming and dissolving, whispering without sound. The lantern swung slightly. Pale light strobed across the path. Revealed roots that seemed to curl like fingers. I stepped again. Damp leaves crunched softly beneath me. Cold mist curling higher. The path seemed to pull me. The lantern ahead, swinging gently, almost guiding, almost patient. A faint rustle to my left. Branches scraping lightly against each other, against my jacket. I turned. Nothing. Only fog and shadow. Only the path stretching forward, framed by twisted trunks. The lantern swayed closer. Pale light brushing over damp stones. Water droplets glinting on moss. Shadows leaned and stretched with each step. Faces forming in their folds. Eyes that weren't eyes. Mouths that weren't mouths. I hesitated. Foot hovering over a slick root. Heart racing. Breath heavy in my ears. The fog pressed tighter. Cold droplets against my neck. My hair damp, sticking to my skin. The lantern swung slightly faster. A rhythm I could almost follow, almost understand. I inhaled slowly. Damp air, faint smoke, the scent of earth and was swirling together. I stepped forward again. The shadows twisted, almost welcoming, almost waiting. Faces flickered again. Smiles that weren't smiles. Watching. Patient. Silent. The path curved unexpectedly. Leaning trees blocked my view ahead. Shadows pooling at the edges. I stopped. Footsteps soft. Heart pounding. Breath visible in the pale lantern glow. The lantern swung once more. Drawing me. Leading me. Almost patient. Almost insistent. A subtle hum rose through the fog. Low. Almost imperceptible. Vibrating through the damp air. Threading into my chest. The shadows leaned closer. Faces flickering with each sway of the lantern. I tried to look away. My eyes returned. Always returned. The path ahead, the swinging glow, the faces in the darkness. The fog curled around my legs, pressing upward, cold, wet, insistent. I exhaled slowly, breath misting in the lantern light. A root caught my boot. I stumbled slightly. The lantern swung nearer. Shadows flickered. Faces staring, dissolving. The path continued. Narrow, twisting, unknown. I wanted to step back, turn away, but the lantern's glow pulled me forward. The air hummed faintly. Low vibration threading through the fog, through the ground, through my chest. Shadows twisted once more. Faces forming, fleeting, warning. Waiting. I stepped forward. Damp leaves pressed underfoot. Cold mist curling around my sleeves. The lantern swayed gently, guiding me, patient, insistent. A branch scraped lightly against my jacket, rustling, almost teasing, almost familiar. The path curved again. Trees bent as if to block my view. Shadows pulled at the edges, folding inward. I exhaled again, heart racing, breath shallow, fingers brushing wet moss and bark for balance. The lantern swung once more, pale light revealing just enough. Shadows flickering in rhythm, faces forming and dissolving in periphery. I realized I was not walking to the lantern. The lantern was swinging toward me. The fog pressed closer. Damp cold, alive. The path narrowed. Shadows leaned. Faces flickered. And I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't proceed, but unable to stop. The forest held its breath. Cold fog curled around my ankles, damp and heavy. Each step pressed soft into wet earth. My own breath rose in front of me, mist curling visible. But no one was there. Silence pressed against my ears. Thick, endless, amplifying each beat of my heart. I stopped, listened, the hum of my pulse loud against the stillness. Branches leaned slightly, brushing against each other. Rustling, a whisper of movement, but nothing visible. The fog thickened, soft, insistent, clinging to my jacket, curling around my sleeves. My chest tightened, breath coming out in short clouds. Damp cold alive. A pause stretched. Long eternity folding around me. I exhaled slowly. The mist followed, curling around my face, pressing into my hair, into my eyes. I stepped forward, foot sinking slightly into wet moss. Cold, rough, earthy. The forest seemed to inhale with me. Deep, slow, pressing air into my lungs. Breathing in unison. A soft rustle. Behind me, to my left, I turned slowly. Fog curling between the trunks. Shadows leaning. Watching. Waiting. Nothing moved. Only the fog and the forest. Inhaling. I stepped again. Footsteps muffled by wet leaves and soft earth. A cold breeze brushed my neck. Damp and fleeting. Faint, almost teasing. I froze. Heart pounding. Mist swirling in front of me. Curling over my hands. The silence stretched. Deeper, heavier. My heart beat louder now. Thumping in my ears. Throbbing in my chest. Branches shifted. Not sharply. Not violently. Slowly, patiently. Shadows folding and leaning. I could feel the fog brushing my skin. Cold droplets clinging to hair and jacket. Dampness pressing into every movement. My breath rose in ragged clouds. Visible, white against the gray fog. Each exhale lingering too long. A soft hum vibrated through the ground. Low, almost imperceptible. Threading up through my boots, my legs, into my chest. The forest felt alive. Watching. Breathing. Patient. I stepped carefully. Cold moss pressing into the soles of my feet. Earthy smell, damp and rich. Curling into my nose. Another pause. Another eternity folding in silence. I could feel the fog pressing tighter around my ankles, my calves. Soft, insistent, alive. A subtle rustling to my right. Branches brushing lightly. Dry leaves whispering. Almost teasing. Almost deliberate. I turned slowly. Only fog. Only leaning trunks. Shadows pooling in corners. Breath fog before me again. I blinked. My chest rose and fell. Cold droplets of mist brushing my hair. The hum deepened slightly. Low vibration threading through the fog, through the earth, through me. I exhaled slowly, breath curling in the damp air, fog swirling and clinging to my hands, my sleeves. The forest waited, patient, watching, breath synchronized with mine. I stepped forward again, wet leaves pressed beneath soft soles, roots curling slightly, slick with moisture. The silence stretched longer, my heartbeat thudding, my lungs filling with damp, cold air. A fleeting cold breath brushed the back of my neck. Not wind, not air, something alive. Soft, insistent, patient. I froze, heart hammering, mist curling around my fingers, my hair. The forest inhaling, waiting. Branches shifted again. Shadows stretching impossibly, twisting with the fog. Faces almost there, almost seen, folding into the gray. I inhaled slowly, breath fogging in front of me, heart thudding loud enough to feel in my ears. Each pause became eternity, each step a careful negotiation with the mist and shadows. The cold pressed against my skin, my lungs, my spine, fog curling, wrapping, alive. I tried to move quietly, footsteps soft, muted by damp leaves, heart still hammering. The forest waited, watching, breathing, silent but alive. A cold exhale brushed my neck again, damp, fleeting, almost a warning. I held still, breath fogging in front of me, mist curling higher, shadows folding along the trunks. Time slowed, silence deepened, eternity stretched between my steps. The forest seemed infinite, cold, damp, alive, inhaling with me, every pause an eternity. And in that silence, that cold, that fog, I realized I was not alone. But nothing moved, yet I could feel it, watching, patient, alive. The shoreline stretched before me, fog curling over wet sand, thick and cold, damp wind pressing against my face. Waves crashed softly, rhythm slow, relentless, salt tang in the air, wet and sharp. A dark shape appeared ahead, a figure atop a rock, still, silent, unmoving. Pale light fell from the fading sky, silhouetted it sharply against the mist. I froze, breath rising in ragged clouds, cold against my cheeks. The figure did not move, and yet I felt its gaze, piercing, heavy, fixing me. I stepped forward, footsteps muffled on wet sand, cold water curling at my toes. The figure remained, dry, untouched by the waves that slapped the rock's base. Heart thudding in my chest, each beat loud against the silence. The waves broke again, spray misting my jacket, sea salt damp and bracing. I stepped closer. The figure remained still, shape dark, shoulders rigid, head tilted slightly, watching. A soft hum rose from the waves, low, vibrating through my feet, threading into my legs, pressing into my chest. The moment stretched, unbearable. Time slowed, air heavy with mist, salt, and fear. I inhaled slowly, cold, wet air filling my lungs, mist curling in front of my face. The figure didn't move. Eyes, I couldn't see them, but I felt them, watching, piercing, silent. I stepped again, wet sand giving softly under my weight, spray misting my face, wind curling through my hair. The fog shifted. Shadows from the figure stretched unnaturally along the rock, jagged, impossible. A distant call of a gull echoed, hollow, alone. I swallowed, breath catching in my chest, salt and damp mist curling into my nose. The figure remained unmoving, solid, alive, but impossibly still. The waves surged again, water slapping against the rock, spray mist in my arms, yet the figure stayed dry. A pulse of wind brushed my neck, damp, cold, insistent. I exhaled slowly, fog swirling around my boots, curling upward. Step closer, step closer. The figure remained, waiting, patient. Shadows pulled at its feet, darkness clinging, stretching slightly, not natural. The hum from the waves deepened, low, vibrating, threading through my body, pulling, pressing. I blinked. The figure didn't shift, did not breathe, did not move, yet it felt alive, watching, patient, aware. Salt spray pressed against my skin. Cold, damp, sharp. Mist curling along my sleeves. I stepped closer. Heart thudding, pulse racing. Each inhale visible in the pale light. Shadows twisted again, stretching from the figure, along the rock, into the fog. Jagged, unnatural. I felt the weight of its gaze more strongly. Pressure behind my eyes, in my chest, a subtle, insistent pull. The wave surged again. Spray misted my face and jacket. Salt and cold pressing, relentless. Step, foot sinking slightly into wet sand. Step, step, closer. The figure remained, unmoving, watching, waiting. A soft rustle of fog curling around my legs. Mist brushing ankles and boots. Damp, alive. The wind shifted, carrying faint whispers. Not words, just threads of sound. Almost voices, almost calling. I froze, heart thudding, breath fogging in front of me, mist curling around my sleeves. Step closer. Step, step. The figure remained, silent, solid, alive. The moment stretched, time slowed, waves crashed, mist pressed, fog curling higher, salt in my nose, cold on my skin, damp hair clinging, mist curling across my boots. Step closer. Step, step, heart racing, breath visible, each exhale curling in the fog. The figure remained, unmoved, watching, patient, silent. I realized I could not look away, could not leave, could not stop noticing. Its presence pressed against me, heavy, quiet, unyielding. The fog shifted slightly, mist curling around my boots, wet sand clinging, cold pressing against skin. The waves rose, white and frothy. Spray misted my arms, salt sharp and bitter. The figure did not move, did not blink, did not breathe. Yet I felt it, solid, watching, piercing, alive. And I was aware, alone, alone beneath the mist, beneath the fog, beneath the silent, unwavering gaze of the figure atop the rock. Time stretched again, eternity folding softly into the crashing waves. I stepped closer still, heart thundering, breath fogging in front of me, mist curling along my sleeves. The figure did not move, and I did not stop. The cabin waited. Its walls sagged, damp and cracked, would press softly under my fingers, rough and cold. A faint smell of rot and dust clung to the air, earthy, sharp, alive. I stepped inside. Floorboards groaned under careful weight. Shadows pooled in corners. Dark, thick, almost moving. The walls, they whispered. Not words I understood. Not language I knew. Just fragments, flickers. Phrases curling into the air and fading before I could catch them. I held still, breath rising in soft clouds. Fog from outside curling through broken windows. Damp and cold against my skin. A floorboard creaked behind me. Not loudly, not harshly, just soft, patient, deliberate. I turned. Shadows shifted across the ceiling, stretching, folding. Liquid shapes crawling across the wood. I pressed my hand to the wall. Rough, damp, almost breathing beneath my palm. A subtle hum vibrated through the air, low, threading into my chest, into my legs, into my mind. The whispering grew slightly louder. Not louder in sound, but in presence, in insistence. I could feel the words crawling along the walls, touching my shoulders, brushing my neck. I wanted to leave, step back into fog, into open air, into something tangible. But I couldn't. Feet pressed softly against the warped boards, roots of shadow curling around ankles. The ceiling shadows shifted again, stretching, pooling, folding. Faces almost formed in the darkness. Fleeting. Impossible. I swallowed. Mist from outside curled along my sleeves. Cold pressing into wrists. Damp. Heavy. The whispering continued. Phrases almost complete. Words I almost understood. Threads of language curling like smoke. I took a cautious step. Floorboard groaned softly beneath. Would damp and slick with age. Shadows pooled near the corners again. Edges flickering like liquid oil. A faint hum threaded from the walls themselves. low, vibrating, patient, resonating through the air and into my chest. I pressed my fingers again to the wood. Rough, damp, cold, alive. The whispers shifted, almost teasing, curling higher, brushing the sides of my face. I exhaled slowly, breath fogging in front of me, mist from outside curling higher, cold pressing into lungs and hair. I tried to step forward, foot pressing against warped floor. Shadows stretched, flowing like liquid toward me. The walls seemed to lean slightly, closing in, patient, waiting. I froze, heart thudding, fog swirling around boots, mist curling along my sleeves, cold pressing everywhere. The whispers coiled into the corners, soft, insistent, not loud, but impossible to ignore. I could almost hear them clearly, words I shouldn't know, phrases that shouldn't exist. I wanted to turn, flee, step back into the fog outside, into something I could grasp, but my feet stayed, pressed softly against the warped boards, rooted, patient, afraid. The shadows on the ceiling twisted again, stretching long, impossible, faces forming and dissolving, soft, fleeting. A faint hum rose from the walls, vibrating through me, low, insistent, threading into my chest and arms. I exhaled again, breath fog curling, mist from outside curling higher, damp pressing into hair and sleeves. I took a cautious step, foot sinking slightly into old boards. Rough, slick, alive. The whispers intensified, phrases curling closer, brushing shoulders, neck, hair, almost tangible. I pressed my hand against the wall again, cold, damp, rough, pulsing softly, alive with intent. Shadows pulled again in the corners, liquid, folding, stretching. Faces flickered fleetingly, watching, patient. The hum deepened slightly, threading through the cabin, through my chest, through my mind. I tried to move. Feet shifted softly against the boards. Floor groaned. Shadows reacted, folding slightly, curling. The whispers pressed closer, not in sound, but in presence, in weight, in insistence. I wanted to run, to leave, step into fog, into something solid. But my feet remained, alone in the cabin, surrounded by whispering walls, shadows crawling across the ceiling, faces forming and dissolving, cold pressing into skin, mist curling around sleeves, hum vibrating softly through chest. I realized then I could not leave. I was here, with the walls, with the whispers, with the shadows, patient, waiting, alive. The forest waited. Tall trees stretched overhead, their bark rough, damp, cold against my fingertips. The fog clung to my ankles, thick, silent, drifting, carrying something old, forgotten. I stepped forward. Leaves crunched softly beneath boots, mist curling over them, cold and wet. The trees, they were hollowed from within. Pale light pulsed from the gaps, soft, steady, breathing with a rhythm I could feel in my chest. I paused, breath fogging before me, mist curling around hair and sleeves, cold pressing into my shoulders. Figures drifted between the trunks, slow, spectral, almost transparent. They moved like smoke, not bound by the ground, floating just above it. I blinked. They remained, watching, patient, silent. The fog thickened, whispering, words almost audible, carried from somewhere long gone. I could feel the pulse from the hollow trees, soft vibration through my hands, through the soles of my boots. Figures drifted closer, not threatening, just observing. Patient, quiet, ancient. I stepped forward again. Footfall soft, fog curling higher, damp pressing into sleeves and hair. A faint hum rose from the hollow trees, low, pulsing, threading through the mist, through the forest, through my chest. The figures paused with me, movement frozen in the soft glow of the hollow light. I could smell the earth, damp soil, moss, old wood, rotting leaves curling in the fog. A soft rustle, not loud, not sudden, just deliberate. I pressed a hand to one of the hollow trunks, cold, smooth inside, pulsing softly, alive with something I could not name. The figures shifted, slowly, quietly, like smoke drifting in a breeze I could not feel. The whispers rose, faint, threading through the fog. I almost understood them, words from a language lost, or never meant for me. I took another step. Fog, swirling around my boots, mist curling higher, cold pressing into lungs and hair. The hollow light pulsed again. Steady, patient, the figures move with it, drifting, folding, observing. I could feel the weight of silence. Dense, thick, pressing against my skin, against my chest, against my mind. I stopped, heart thudding, breath curling into fog. The forest seemed to inhale with me. Figures paused again, their outlines hazy, flickering with the pulsing light. Silent, watching. The fog carried whispers closer. Faint phrases curling around ankles, brushing the backs of my hands, sliding along my sleeves. I pressed both hands to a hollow trunk. Cold, damp, smooth, pulsing softly, alive with intent. The spectral figures drifted closer, almost tangible in the pale glow, shadows folding into the fog around them. A faint vibration threaded through the ground, soft, steady, rhythmic, aligning with the pulse of the hollow trees. I shivered, breath fog curling before me, cold pressing into every inch of my skin. The fog thickened further, the whispers swirling in tandem, threading through the spectral figures, through the hollow trees, through me. I could almost see the outlines of faces inside the light, pale, shifting, fleeting, watching silently. I wanted to step back, to leave the fog, the cold, the pulsing light, but my feet stayed, pressed softly against the damp forest floor. Rooted, patient, afraid. The figures drifted closer still, not threatening, not moving fast, just present, constant, watching. I exhaled slowly, breath fog curling into mist, damp pressing along sleeves and hair. The hum pulsed again, soft, patient, threading through my chest, through my mind, through the fog. I stepped forward one more time, fog curling higher, damp pressing cold into skin. Figures shifted with me, moving as if breathing together, slow, spectral, patient. The hollow trees pulsed again, pale light flickering softly inside their trunks, almost alive, almost breathing. I realized then the forest was watching, waiting, alive, patient. I was alone, but not alone, among the hollow trees, among the drifting figures, among whispers of something long gone, breath curling into fog, cold pressing into every inch of me, heart thudding in soft, deliberate rhythm with the light. I could not leave. I was here, with the light, with the figures, with the fog, with the forest itself. The path appeared, then vanished, fog shifting with each breath, curling dense, soft against my face. Shadows stretched along the ground, too long, too thin, twisting unnaturally under the pale light. I stepped forward, footsteps muffled in the damp earth, then stopped. The echoes didn't stop. A rhythm in the fog, a pulse under my boots. The air smelled of wet leaves and cold stone, mist curling along the edges of my coat. The path flickered again, appearing, disappearing. I could see it, then it was gone. The shadows bent toward me, stretching along trunks and roots. I tried to follow, my eyes strained. Fog pressed into them, heavy and damp. A soft rustle behind me. Not sudden, not sharp, just there. I turned slowly. Nothing moved, only mist curling over the forest floor. I stepped again. The path ahead wavered. Thin lines of pale light, cutting through the fog, guiding me, or trapping me. The shadows stretched farther, twisting into shapes that felt almost human, almost aware. I stopped again. Footsteps echoed, though I hadn't moved. Cold pressed against my neck, breath curling in front of me, fog swallowing every sound. I could hear the hum beneath the mist, low, static, vibrating to the soles of my boots. The air smelled faintly of smoke, or something decayed. I couldn't tell. I followed the faint glimmer. Footfalls soft, careful, Mist curling higher, wet against my cheeks, pressing into my hair. The path flickered once more. Then I saw it, something waiting at the end, not yet revealed, just present. The fog thickened, hiding its form. Only the sense of being watched remained. Heavy, silent, patient. I shivered, cold curling into my shoulders, down my spine. The shadows stretched closer, but never reached, stretching over roots, over stones, over thin patches of fog. Each step forward echoed twice, soft, deliberate, carrying into the fog. I paused, breath curling into the mist, heart beating fast, slower than the rhythm of my footfalls, but too loud in the quiet. A soft vibration thrummed through the path. Beneath boots, beneath fog, beneath awareness, the light flickered again. A thin ribbon of path appearing between the dense fog. Shadows bent, twisted. Figures I couldn't name lurking just out of reach. I stepped forward, mist curling along sleeves and ankles, damp pressing against skin. The path shivered beneath my gaze, flickering in and out of reality. I could hear the soft hum of something waiting. Beneath the fog, beyond the reach of vision. Patient, still, alive. I stopped, heart loud in my chest, breath fog curling higher, fog pressing into hair and collar. Shadows twisted with the light, forming fleeting shapes along the path. Faces that vanished if I looked directly. The waiting presence remained unseen. I felt its gaze. Heavy, cold, patient. I took another step, mist curling higher. Soft crunch of leaves underfoot. The echoes of my footsteps stretched endlessly. Forward, backward, repeating in the fog. The path flickered again, appearing closer, then farther away. The air pressed against me. Fog swirling around wrists and ankles. Cold pressing into bones. The unseen watcher waited at the end. Patient, silent, immovable. I stepped once more. Footfalls soft, careful. Heart thudding in the rhythm of the flickering path. The fog pressed closer. Shadows curling in toward me. Twisting, bending, alive. The path appeared briefly. A thin, pale line, leading onward, then vanished again. I stopped, breath curling in the cold mist. Heart thudding. Fog pressing in, soft and damp. The figure waited, still unseen, watching through the shifting fog. I could feel it. Patient, waiting. The path flickered once more beneath my boots, and I could do nothing but follow. I returned. The path led me back, or I thought it did. Mist curled between the trees. Pale light glimmered off damp leaves. The cabin should have been there, but it wasn't. Nothing. Only the forest rearranged. Trees shifted as if in a different formation. Branches bent toward me, or away. I couldn't tell. The ground was soft underfoot. Damp pine needles pressing into boots. Every step sinking slightly. I called softly, my voice swallowed by the thick air. No echo, only silence. A rustle behind me, or in front. Impossible to know. I turned slowly. Shadows stretched along the trunks. Long, twisting, unfamiliar. The air smelled faintly of smoke. Or was it damp wood? I couldn't place it. The sense of unreality pressed against me. Heavy, soft, inescapable. I knelt to touch the earth. Cold, wet, alive. A subtle hum vibrated beneath my fingers. The cabin should have been there. The walls, the door, the faint flicker of pale light inside. But the clearing was empty. I stepped forward, fog curling around my legs. Soft footsteps echoing beneath me. But not mine. I swore I could see the roofline at the edge of the mist. Then it was gone. Shadows of trees rearranged themselves. The forest breathed around me, stretching, bending, observing. I spun in place. Nothing. The air pressed against my face. Cold, wet, insistent. Each breath visible, curling higher in the fog. The smell of damp pine was strong. Under it, something sharper. Iron, decay, maybe both. I whispered my own name. It sounded alien. Not mine. The ground shifted beneath my boots, soft and yielding. Roots snaking across the path. I thought I knew. I began to wonder. Did I ever truly arrive? Had I stepped from mist into forest, or had the forest stepped into me? A faint light flickered through the fog. Perhaps the cabin. Perhaps a trick of memory. I moved toward it. Careful, slow, breath curling around my cheeks. Heart steady but loud in my ears. The light vanished. The forest felt alive. Watching, shaping itself. The clearing where the cabin had stood stretched endlessly now. Trees bending in impossible directions. Every step forward pressed into the soft beneath the earth. Vibrating through boots, through bones, through awareness. I paused. Shadows twisted in impossible ways. Long fingers brushing along the fog. Shapes I couldn't name, couldn't place. I whispered again. My voice disappeared into the thick mist. The clearing remained empty. No cabin, no door, no pale glow. Only fog, only trees, only the unshakable sense that nothing here was fixed. The forest rearranged itself quietly, patiently. I stood still, breath curling into the cold air, the mist pressing soft and wet against my skin. A faint hum resonated beneath me, or inside me. I couldn't tell. I wondered, for the first time, if the arrival had ever been real, if I had ever been real, or if the forest had simply been waiting. I pause. The ground beneath my boots trembles ever so slightly. Mist curls around my ankles, damp and thick. The trees sway, slowly, almost like lungs. I hear the rustle of branches, whispering, or is it just wind? Fog pulses around me, rising, falling. Each breath of it presses against my cheeks, my neck, my chest. I step forward. My footsteps echo, louder than they should. Alone, yet not alone. The forest exhales with me. The air tastes faintly metallic. Or maybe it is salt from the hidden shore. Leaves brush my arms. Cold, wet, shivering. The island moves. I feel it, beneath my boots, through my skin, in my bones. Shadows stretch, shorten, twisting unnaturally. The hum of the earth vibrates faintly, underfoot and in the air. I pause again. Fog swirls into patterns I can't name. Shapes fleeting and intangible. I smell damp moss, decaying wood, and something older, something waiting. The trees bend. Their trunks sigh, limbs leaning toward me, or away. I am insignificant here. A faint whisper drifts through the fog. My name, or another's. Each inhale of the island presses into my lungs, expands inside me. My boot sinks slightly into softened earth. Echoing footsteps following, but no one is there. The fog pulses again, like lungs, breathing, watching. I take a careful step. Then another. Branches scrape softly against my jacket. Tiny scratches. Gentle, deliberate. The island inhales. I exhale, and it shifts. Just a fraction. Enough for me to feel it. Alone. The sound of my heartbeat is loud, resonating in the mist. I glance around. Shadows bend. Light fractures through fog in pale ribbons. The ground hums softly, vibrates underfoot. A static whisper through the soil. I stop, hold my breath. Even in stillness, I hear it. The island moving. A low rhythm. Slow, steady, alive. I feel small, hollowed, swallowed. The fog wraps tighter. The trees bend closer. I sense eyes, or the absence of them, watching, waiting. Footsteps echo again. Not mine, not anyone's. I step forward anyway, softly, carefully. The mist pulses with each movement, contracting, expanding. A leaf falls, drifts through the thick air, quiet, like a whisper warning. The island exhales around me, slowly, in waves. I breathe, softly. I try to match it. It hums underfoot, around me, inside me. The feeling grows, vast, unfathomable that I am here, alone, yet watched, yet known. The fog thickens. Shadows stretch impossibly long. Every sound I make ripples through the air, echoes against unseen walls of trees. I realize this place doesn't just exist. It moves. It breathes. It waits. And I am nothing but a single fragile step within it. I stop. The fog curls, pressing against my skin, cold and soft. The trees sway slowly. Each pulse of the island echoes in my chest. I stand still, silent, listening. The island inhales. I exhale, and the mist folds around me, patient and infinite. The cabin is still. Dust drifts in pale light through a cracked window. The air is cold, damp, heavy. I step inside. Floorboards groan beneath me, complaining softly. A mirror hangs crooked on the wall. Its glass catches a faint sunlight, bending it into sharp lines across the floor. I pause. A shadow shifts behind me. I turn. Nothing. The room exhales a slow, damp breath. I look back at the mirror. The shadow lingers, longer than a heartbeat. My reflection stares. It shouldn't. Everything feels thinner, fragile. I step closer. The smell of old wood, damp and rotting, curls around my nose. The mirror trembles slightly, though the air is still. I move my hand. The shadow moves with mine, but it isn't mine. I freeze. The reflection blinks, or does it? A static hum vibrates faintly through the walls. I hear my own breath, loud, shaky. The shadow leans closer. The edges of the mirror distort. Shapes ripple across the glass. A whisper brushes against my ear. My name? Or the wind? I dare not turn. The floor creaks behind me, soft and deliberate. I sense movement but see nothing. The shadow pulses in the glass, stretching impossibly. The light fractures. Pale lines cut across the room. I step back. The reflection lingers. Smiling faintly, maybe, or maybe it's my imagination. I reach for the mirror. Cold touches my fingers before the glass. It hums under my skin. Static, alive. I step away. The room exhales again. Damp, musty, heavy. I glance at the shadow one last time. It seems to sink into the glass. Waiting for me. I leave the cabin. The floorboards sigh behind me. Outside, the fog presses against the walls. Silent, watching. And the mirror waits, patient and unblinking. The fog drifts in from the water. Thick, cold damp. It swallows the shoreline first. Then the trees. Every familiar landmark vanishes. The island feels smaller, tighter. I step forward. Mist coils around my ankles, dampening my boots. Shadows shift in the gray. They merge, form shapes. Humanoid, but wrong. I stumble. The ground is uncertain. Wet, soft. I call out. My voice disappears into the fog. Even my breathing sounds strange here. Every echo is swallowed. I turn. Shapes drift at the edge of sight. Tall, thin, endless. The fog hums softly, or maybe it's the shadows moving. I reach out. Nothing. Only damp, clammy air brushes my fingers. A soft rustling drifts from all directions. The trees seem to bend, leaning closer, watching. I can't tell which way is forward. Steps feel heavier, slower. I try to mark the path. Nothing leaves a trace. My heartbeat hammers in my chest. The fog presses against my face. Cold, wet, alive. A faint shimmer in the distance. Or just another trick of the gray. The humanoid shapes sway with a rhythm I can't follow. I step back. They advance, or I do. I stop. Stillness is worse than movement. The fog pulses. Inhaling, exhaling. My skin prickles. A faint smell rises. Damp wood, salt, something old. I sense movement behind me. I dare not look. The mist thickens. I reach a clearing, or what I think is one. The shape circles silently, merging into a wall of gray. My boots sink slightly. The earth seems to swallow me. I whisper, hoping it carries. Nothing answers. I am alone. The fog flows around me, brushing my hair, my neck. A soft hum vibrates through the air. Not wind, not water. Something else. I take a step forward. The shapes bend closer. They do not speak. They do not blink. I blink. The fog parts for an instant. I see nothing I recognize. Only gray. Endless gray. I stop again. The fog thickens further. The world narrows to my breath, my pulse. my footsteps. I am lost, and yet the fog feels alive. It watches. It waits. I do not move. The shapes pause too. The mist hums. I exhale slowly. The fog swallows me completely. Silence. Then nothing. The fog rests. It pools around the roots, the rocks, the shoreline. Even the wind holds its breath. The island exhales slowly. I step lightly. The earth feels still beneath me. Leaves hang motionless. Water mirrors the gray sky. Silence presses against my ears. It's heavier than any storm. I sense it first. Eyes. Patient. Unblinking. Watching from the mist. I turn. Nothing moves. Yet the feeling persists. A shadow shifts, almost imperceptibly. I inhale. The cold touches my lungs. Damp, faintly metallic. My heartbeat sounds loud, echoing across the stillness. Even my footsteps feel loud. The fog hugs me, close and suffocating. A distant rock juts from the shore, black and silent. I imagine eyes resting there, patient, waiting. A single ripple stirs in the water. I freeze. The hum of the island pulses faintly. Beneath the fog, beneath the rocks. It's not wind, not water. Something else. I feel it in my chest, a pressure that tightens. The silence stretches. I step forward, careful. Mist drifts over my boots, slick and cold. Every step feels like trespassing. Every breath feels audible. The trees sway slightly, though no wind moves them. Shadows lean closer. I do not run. Running would break the fragile calm. Instead, I walk. Slowly. The island watches. My hair prickles. My skin tightens. I sense movement at the edges of vision. The fog conceals it, but I know it is there, waiting. I step onto a small rise. The view stretches over the shore. Nothing. Only gray. Only still water. Yet I feel eyes tracing me. The calm is worse than chaos. It presses into my chest, my mind, my very bones. I stop again. The island exhales. The fog pulses gently like lungs. I think I hear whispers. Or is it just the fog breathing? The silence returns. I stand alone. The mist coils around me, soft, patient. Time stretches. Minutes, hours, perhaps longer. The island sleeps. And yet it does not rest. It waits. I exhale slowly, feeling the cold brush my face. Shadows retreat slightly, though the eyes linger. I step back. The fog swallows me, but not completely. The silence holds. The island sleeps, and I remain. The fog drifts lower tonight. It presses along the edges of the cabins, curling around broken walls. I hear it first. Voices, soft, distant. They rise from empty rooms, hollow and fading. People I do not know, yet somehow recognize. A laugh, fragile. Footsteps that do not belong to me. I pause. The wooden floor beneath creaks quietly. A door swings open somewhere, slow, deliberate. Shadows move across walls. Shapes linger, replaying moments that have long passed. A woman reaching for a child. A man staring at the sea. They repeat, silently, endlessly. I step closer, drawn by the weight of memory. The air smells of damp wood and smoke long gone. Each breath tastes of salt and ash. The island remembers. I hear whispers behind the broken shutters, carried by the wind. They speak in voices I almost understand. Or perhaps I only imagine it. A chair rocks, as if someone left in a hurry. I imagine their steps returning. The fog coils around the cabins like a soft blanket. I reach a window. Inside, a shadow bends over a table, writing. The pen never moves. The shadow flickers, then disappears. The silence that follows is louder than the echoes. I move through the clearing. Footsteps echo, though I am alone. The smell of wet earth clings to my boots. A faint hum threads through the trees. It carries sadness, a longing I cannot name. Every corner I turn holds a memory. A garden overgrown. A swing that creaks in still air. A door that opens by itself. I imagine them watching, waiting for someone who never comes. The air chills against my skin, damp and sharp. I hear a whisper brush past my ear. Cold, almost tender. I cannot see its source. The fog swallows everything beyond a few feet. The cabins seem to lean closer, listening. Time stretches. Moments fold into each other. The island hums softly, a low vibration beneath my feet. I crouch by the edge of a broken porch. Shadows twist, stretching across splintered boards. Faces appear in the fog. They do not move, only watch. The sadness presses against my chest. I inhale and it fills my lungs. The voices rise, then fade again. A candle flickers in a distant window. No one is there. I step back. The island exhales. The echoes linger. I do not speak. I cannot. Their stories remain, etched into the walls, the floor, the very air. I am alone, yet surrounded. The fog curls tighter, soft and encompassing. Breath fogs in front of me. I taste a memory of things I never lived. A chair creaks. A shadow slides across the wall. I shiver. The island sleeps, but its past moves quietly. Around me, through me, I step forward, careful, silent. The echoes follow, patient. The night stretches. The cabins wait. I walk among them, unseen. I leave nothing behind, and yet the memory lingers. The island remembers. And so do I. The fog lies heavy tonight. It rolls in waves, soft and cold, brushing my skin. I feel the damp cling to my hair, seep into my clothes. The trees around me sway without wind. A shadow moves among them. Closer, the figure returns. I see its shape through the mist, pale and impossible. No eyes, only darkness that presses outward. My heartbeat pulses in my ears. I try to breathe slowly. The fog curls at my ankles, thick and whispering. It blends with the night, wrapping the figure like cloth. I step forward, but the ground seems to stretch beneath me. The air tastes metallic, sharp. A rustling passes above, branches or whispers. I cannot tell. I stop. The figure does not. It remains, a silhouette against the muted glow of fog. The silence grows heavier, pressing into my chest. No birds call. No insects hum. Even the fog is still, hovering as if waiting. I realize there is no escape. The path behind me has vanished. The horizon melts into gray. I am alone, and yet not alone. The figure tilts slightly, motionless yet aware. I sense its gaze through every nerve, every shadow around me. A cold rises in my spine. I exhale. The mist curls around my face, tasting faintly of salt and earth. A soft hum threads through the air, low and unsteady. The figure steps closer. The fog parts for it, folding around its form like water. I feel its presence in the soles of my feet. The ground beneath hums faintly with its weight, though it never touches. I do not run. I cannot. I understand, finally. Being alone was never meant to be simple. The fog presses in, and the figure grows clearer. Its shape stretches taller, almost blending with the trees. The night exhales around us. I taste the dampness of decay in the fog, feel it settle on my skin. A shiver moves from my toes to my hair. Yet, the figure does not move more than it has. It waits, patient, silent. The stillness wraps me, tight and final. I feel my breath, loud and clumsy in the quiet. Every heartbeat echoes in the hollow spaces of the island. I step forward a fraction. The figure mirrors me, not in form, but in weight. I realize it has always been here, always waiting. The fog thickens around us, soft and encompassing. Time bends. Moments stretch, endless and gentle. I taste the air, cold and alive, smelling of wet wood and something older. The silence hums with intent. I stand. The figure remains. I feel its presence, not threatening but inevitable. A shadow brushes past my vision. I do not flinch. The island exhales around us, pulsing with the slow rhythm of something immense. I understand that to leave is impossible. And perhaps I do not want to. The fog swirls. The figure shifts, almost imperceptibly. I hear my own heartbeat slowing. A cold settles over my shoulders, steady and final. The mist presses against my cheeks, wet and calm. I breathe in, taste the salt, the soil, the memory of the island itself. The figure is here. I am here. Alone. Together. The night stretches. The fog folds us in. Silence wraps every sound. I do not move. I do not speak. The figure remains. The island exhales once more. I am nothing, and yet I am present, alone with the figure, and the night holds us both.